You ever stop and think about your eyes? I mean, really think about how a living, breathing part of your body manages to stay perfectly clear. It's an absolute marvel of biological engineering. It's this constant, high-stakes chemical balancing act that lets us both live and see. So today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of how our eyes pull off this see-through survival. Okay, so here's the big puzzle. Every single living organ needs fuel, and that fuel usually gets delivered by a whole network of blood vessels. But in the eye, that network would be like trying to look through a window that's covered in pipes and wires. So how in the world does the eye power itself without blocking the very light it's designed to capture?
Well, the solution is pretty radical, actually. Key parts of the eye, like the cornea right at the front and the lens just behind it, are what scientists call avascular, which is just a cool way of saying they have zero blood vessels. None. Now, that's great for seeing through them, but it sets up this huge problem, right? How do you feed those cells?
And to solve that problem, the eye came up with these two amazing specialists, the cornea and the lens. I like to call them the clear survivalists. They figured out these really clever, unique ways to get the fuel they need without messing up our vision. They're basically living on the edge, just sipping enough juice to stay alive.
Okay, so let's break down how these two characters operate, because they're a little different. The cornea, it's right out front, so it's kind of like a scavenger. It grabs its fuel, glucose, from pretty much anywhere it can, from your tears, from the fluid behind it, and even from these tiny little vessels at the very edge. But the lens, it's way more isolated. It's pretty much got one source for its glucose, that same fluid, the aqueous humor.
And their energy strategies totally make sense given where they are. The cornea can do both the high-power oxygen-breathing thing and the less efficient no-oxygen-needed backup plan. But the lens, it's stuck deep inside where there isn't much oxygen, so it's got no choice. It has to rely almost completely on that weaker oxygen-free method. It's a real low-energy lifestyle, but that's the whole secret. That's exactly what helps keep it so perfectly clear.
All right, so we've got the quiet survivalist up front. Now, let's head to the back of the eye, because we're about to meet their total opposite. I'm talking about the retina. And if the lens is sipping energy, the retina is a power-hungry supercomputer. Seriously, it is one of the most energy-demanding tissues in your entire body. It's just constantly torching fuel to make sense of everything you're seeing.
So how does it get all that power? Well, one blood supply isn't enough, not even close. The retina has two of them. It's got this dual fuel line coming from two different sets of vessels just to keep the lights on. And just think about what it's doing. It's taking little packets of light, photons, and turning them into the amazing, high-def picture of the world you have in your head. That job is so fast and so intense, it's no wonder it needs so much juice.
And yeah, unlike the lens, which is a super picky eater, the retina will eat pretty much anything. It runs on this whole cocktail of fuels: glucose, lactate, even fatty acids. The actual cells that see the light, the photoreceptors, they use the body's top-of-the-line turbocharged energy system. It's like a high-performance engine, and it's got a whole pit crew of other cells there just to support it. So, okay, we've got these two totally different approaches, right? The sippers up front and the guzzler in the back. But what's the glue that holds all this together? What keeps the whole system from just falling apart? Well, the answer is these tiny little biological machines called enzymes. They're the real unsung heroes here, the little workers doing all the hard labor to maintain, protect, and run this incredibly delicate operation.
Okay, first up on our team of heroes is the Na+/K+ ATPase. Now that's a mouthful, so just think of it like millions of tiny little pumps, or maybe batteries, all over the surface of the cells. They're just constantly working to keep everything in perfect balance. For the cornea, that pumping action is what literally stops it from getting waterlogged and cloudy. And in the retina, it's what lets those light-detecting cells reset super fast so they can keep firing signals to your brain. This little guy is, absolutely crucial.
All right, next up, let's meet aldose reductase. This one hangs out in the lens. Its job is pretty simple. If there's too much sugar floating around, it converts it into a substance called sorbitol. Think of it as just cleaning up a little mess. Most of the time, no big deal. But I want you to file this one away, because this enzyme, well, let's just say its good intentions can backfire big time.
And last but not least, we have glutathione peroxidase. This is the eye's personal rust proofer. You see, all that high-energy activity, especially in the retina, creates these nasty byproducts called free radicals. The best way to think of them is like biological rust that can damage parts.
Well, this enzyme's whole job is to run around and neutralize that rust, protecting the delicate machinery of the eye from a lifetime of wear and tear. So, we've seen how everything is supposed to work. But what happens when it all goes wrong? What happens when this amazing balancing act fails? Well, the most common answer is something many of us are familiar with: a cataract. That's when the lens gets cloudy. And it's not just a simple physical problem. It's a total breakdown of the biochemistry, right down at the molecular level.
And that's why this idea is so important. Lens transparency isn't just structural, it's deeply biochemical. You have to understand the lens isn't just a static piece of glass. Its clarity is an active process. It's this ongoing, fragile thing that has to be maintained by all those little chemical workers we just talked about. It takes constant work, every single second, to keep it clear.
And I mean, for that lens to stay clear, everything has to be just perfect. There are these special proteins called crystallins, and they're packed together in this unbelievably precise, almost crystal-like pattern. The water level has to be kept super low, and the whole point of this entire setup is to achieve one single goal: make sure light passes through without scattering all over the place.
Okay, so let's walk through how this can fail. Remember our little housekeeper enzyme, aldose reductase? Well, what happens if there's way too much sugar in the system, like with uncontrolled diabetes? That enzyme goes completely nuts. It starts churning out a ton of that sorbitol stuff, and it all gets trapped inside the lens cells. This completely messes up the water balance, causing the cells to swell up and get damaged. And that stress, it breaks that perfect protein pattern we just talked about. The result? The lens gets cloudy.
The other big enemy is that biological rust, that oxidative damage. Over the years, that rust can make those perfectly arranged proteins start to misfold, warp, and clump together. And those clumps? That's what scatters the light. That's what creates the blurriness and the haze of a cataract.
And that right there is why our antioxidant defense team, with heroes like glutathione peroxidase, is so incredibly important. They're like the 24/7 maintenance crew, working for decades to fight off that rust, protect the proteins, and hold on to that crystal clarity that we need to see.
When you really think about it, the eye's ability to stay clear is just this stunning example of how tiny, microscopic chemistry creates the big, macroscopic world we experience. So the next time you just look at something, anything, take a second to appreciate that invisible, high-stakes chemical drama that's happening behind the scenes. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible chemistry is keeping you going right now?